Hi there, podcast and public radio fans. Heath Drusen here, host and creator of the Extremely American podcast. I'm working on season 3, which is an urgent story about neo-Nazi terrorists and how they helped build a modern white supremacist movement, even from prison. Some of their ideas have even made it to today's White House. It's both a gripping true crime story and a timely warning about threats to our democracy. And this time, my investigative reporting is funded by you. To support the project, please make a tax-deductible contribution at extremelyamerican.org. That's extremelyamerican.org. And thanks.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Some places stay with you forever. They shape who you are, they challenge you, they comfort you, but sometimes they break your heart. Our guest today knows that feeling well. Nicole LeFavour has written a new memoir called In the Arms of Mountains. It's a story about growing up in Idaho, about finding your voice, about love and loss, public service, as well as the deep connection between people and the land they call home. It's also a book that challenges some of our assumptions about rural America, and it reminds us that the places we come from are often more complicated and even more beautiful than they appear. And we are lucky enough to have Cole joining us to talk more. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Jenna. It's a delight to be here.
So for folks who haven't picked up the book yet, how would you describe In the Arms of Mountains in your own words?
I would say that it weaves together 3 parts, and those really are my relationship to the land. There's a love story with my partner and spouse of 9 years and civil union for much longer, Carol Grahowski. And then also just the story of my coming into activism and into public service and use of forms of protest, including civil disobedience.
What was interesting to me when I was reading the book is how much there was a sense of place. And what I mean by that is it feels like you really told the story through kind of a lens of Idaho, right? And kind of rural America. Why did you decide to do that instead of simply just writing a political memoir like a lot of, former lawmakers do?
Idaho is pretty unique. I think all of us who love and struggle with it know this. When I first moved here in the 70s with my family, they came because it was more progressive minded and less intrusive feeling place than Colorado. The live and let live nature of it, I think, was very appealing to them. And I think that is something a lot of us have loved about this state. Our policy, though, these days has taken us in really different directions with the rise of white nationalists and the character of the state changing with the people who are moving in. So I couldn't really write the story without writing it about Idaho.
You became the first openly gay person elected to the Idaho legislature. When you look back on that time now, what do you remember most about, that first day? If you can even, remember what that was like walking onto, the floor as an Idaho lawmaker.
I had literally had people say to me, I've never met a gay person before. And we all know they probably had, but it felt very weighty. I was representing thousands of people, 17,000 people or so in my district. And I had to put a face on LGBTQ people for people who thought they'd never met us before. And I took that really seriously. I spent a lot of time getting to know my colleagues, and especially my Republican colleagues, because I knew very well I was going nowhere if I didn't build those relationships.
You spent a lot of years fighting to add the word sexual orientation to Idaho's Human Rights Act. For folks, who aren't familiar with that effort, why were those 2 words so important?
Our existing Human Rights Act covers, race, religion, sex, national origin. And I think my colleagues really understood the need for religion to be protected in law. They,
Hmm.
so many of them were LDS and they had had very hard experiences with that. But we, at this point, still in Idaho, have no right to safety and security and public accommodation. We can be refused service anywhere. And federal policy gives us a little bit of room in employment and housing. But honestly, no one in the state is enforcing that right now. And our city ordinances that protected that have been, just in this last session, invalidated by the state legislature.
Hmm.
So, really, it is just about trying to create safety for people in their jobs so they don't fear being fired because they are gay or transgender.
One of the themes in your memoir is, I think it's very obvious how much you love Idaho. Um, did your years in public service, change your relationship with the state at all, or did it strengthen it in some ways?
Ooh, um, I have, I did have to come to a realization that that body I served in, and I always used the term we when we pass something. I always
Hmm.
included myself in that. We call it a body, and when you are elected, you become a part of it. And I took that very seriously. But one of the things I had to realize is that it is so out of touch with the people of the state, so out
Mm.
of touch. So this body I was part of, it unfortunately, I think in many ways took a turn when I was in there. We passed
Mm.
closed primaries, and I think it stopped listening.
Mm. It feels like politics today is defined by division, right? Like it just does. It feels like we just almost don't want to find common ground when it comes to, many legislative bodies, not just in Idaho. You've spent a huge part of your career trying to build relationships with people while you were in the legislature who didn't always agree with you. And I mean, there's a part of the book where, I mean, you write a lot about certain lawmakers on the other side of the aisle that you worked with a lot. There's a point in the book where you write about former legislator Bart Davis, and you didn't know how he would receive you. And he put his arm around you, gave you a hug. What should folks take away from that? Because it is fair to say that politically, the two of you were on opposite sides of the spectrum. But I really felt like reading the book, you worked so hard to find commonality.
I think a lot of the book explores some of the binaries that we impose and our culture has imposed on us for so long, not just gender, but also political party. I don't think any of us see ourselves as wholly embodied by either political party's beliefs or actions. And, as a person living in rural Idaho again now, I am so aware that I must reach over my back fence and get to know my neighbor, whomever they voted for, or whatever political party they belong to. Because without them, without building those relationships, nothing is going to change for the better. So
Mm.
much of what's wrong is based on a lack of understanding of each other and a lack of actual working together because political parties have divided us.
There really does seem to be a thread of hope throughout the whole book. I mean, even when you were disappointed over and over and over again, I mean, was that intentional, or has it just emerged as you've reflected back on that time in your life?
Um, I was disappointed over and over and over again. But I must say that there is something that I recognize about that time and about my ability to build relationships. And that is that I am that person who is always going to want to win people over. That is who I am. Disappointment in politics is nothing compared to now. As hard as things were then, and as many times as I struggled, I at one point had 10 co-sponsors for the bill to add the words to include LGBT people in protections on employment, housing, and public accommodation. And this legislature now, I think so many of us would trade the one we had then and the one that was so hard for me for the one we have now. Because what we have now is so extreme. The degree of white nationalism you see in there now, obviously Republicans are becoming tired of it, because you see this last Republican primary take 5 of the 8 most extreme members out. And I think that that's where the hope lies for me, is in the fact that we are not just Republicans and Democrats. We are human beings who care about our neighbors and care about the future of the state that we live in.
I have just about a minute left with you, and I would like to know if, when readers walk away from this book, from putting it down, what do you hope the one thing is that they remember?
I think, again, that binaries are oversimplifications. If anyone went through the book and also maybe, has looked around at the young, they have taken gender and race and political party and kind of shaken it up. And the things that we may be in a need for comfort or in a need for control in government have forced on people into either ors or black or whites, those aren't serving us well. They're tearing us apart.
I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. We've been speaking with former Idaho State Senator Nicole LeFavour, about their new memoir. It's called In the Arms of Mountains, and it's available now. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Idaho Matters. And for quick news of the day, start your mornings with our podcast. It's called The Connector, Idaho Daily News. And you can also listen to Boise State Public Radio podcasts, including Idaho Matters, on YouTube.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious, because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.